This conference will now be recorded.
There you go. Well, actually, stopped
This conference will now be recorded.
your reference, but it's the top of the hour, so I want to get started. So thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Todd Smith. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder and owner of Level 5 Financial. We are an independent registered investment advisory firm here in Colorado. And this is part of our kind of educational series that we try to offer clients at least quarterly. And this is a very important topic, not only for my industry and my company, but also all of our clients. So I've invited Ralph Gagliardi here from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to speak about fraud and cybercrime. So I'm going to pass this over to him shortly, but I'll just let you know what I know of him. This is the first time we've met, but he is the agent in charge of CBI, or the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. He oversees the high-tech crimes unit, which encompasses everything, I think, identity theft, fraud, and cyber crimes, and more. So I'll let Ralph speak to that and his background, but he doesn't look like it, but he's got 31 years, I guess it says, of law enforcement experience. You look young for that, Ralph, but so you started early, right?
21.
There you go. There you go. So, so yeah, thanks again for everybody for joining. Ralph has preferred, if you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask along the way. If you prefer, you can also enter questions in the chat box. That should be in the top right-hand corner. There's a little bubble up there. If you click on that, I will monitor those and let Ralph know as he's speaking. But feel free, whatever format is most comfortable for you, so we can make this somewhat interactive. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to Ralph. Ralph, thanks so much for being here, and take it away.
Yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to make sure, just to start with, we're not going to make, I doubt we're going to make groundbreaking events or comments here, right? Everybody's inundated with cyber safety and other measures, right? But I do think that the value is repetitiveness, and then maybe taking away a nugget or two, and just being aware. So attending trainings like this, and seeking out information is always good. Like we started off with a little bit about my background. Started in the early 90s in law enforcement, and I quickly found I was considered a blank magnet. I'll let you fill that word in there, but I learned real quick that a lot of folks did a lot of work to talk themselves out of doing reports. So I easily became the go-to guy doing things. So that just progressed through my entire career. So I've had a very exciting career, like we said, 31, coming on 32 years now. And I've done it all. So I've navigated or ended up in financial crimes. But I think why that is because it's hard. People, human nature, they do not like to do things that are hard. Who does, right? Especially in my line of work. So the officers, the men and women in law enforcement that gravitate towards financial fraud, I'm not taking away anything from anybody else, but it's hard work. And why is it hard work? Well, especially nowadays with everything being digital. I'll get into that. But a little bit about my background. I had one unique thing that was really unique. It's going to go in chapter 3 of my book. In 91, I think it was 91, I swapped with a young officer up northern Colorado. We swapped departments, and I went undercover back to high school for approximately 3-4 months. And nobody knew I was undercover. The police chief and his detective of the town knew I was there, and eventually I did meet them. But I was set on to go back to high school. I was a high school senior. I was 23 at the time. It sounds probably a little funner than if that's a word. It sounds funner than it was, but You haven't lived until you sat in a health class with a bunch of freshmen when you're 23 years old. So very annoying, to put it that way. But anyway, we worked. I was working drugs and burglaries. That's why I went back. And it wasn't to arrest high school kids. It was to work on those that are preying on the high school kids, selling them drugs, causing them to do other crimes. So that was pretty exciting. One thing that was, I was told a couple things when I was working undercover. You have to be, I didn't need to be told this, but I was still told it, probably rightfully so. Don't screw around with the girls, because I'm over 18. And if you do talk to, do have a girlfriend or whatever, be a gentleman, and that went without saying. So, and then of course, make sure they're over 18. But on that note, when I'm pointing on that, we were at, I took a date. Her family really liked me. I was always just myself with her and her family. We went to see a movie called Point Break. And it was, a bank robbery movie, Keanu Reeves, right, the old one. And we're sitting in there, and my girlfriend at the time, she leaned over and says, "Hey, I don't think this could happen. Nobody could work undercover like this." And I leaned back over her and I said, "You'd be surprised," because she had no idea. So that was kind of a funny thing. I thought that was pretty cool. But we didn't have Google and stuff back then, so it was pretty easy to hide, and there was no Facebooks and none of that stuff. I had to pick up a magazine called High Times just to kind of fit in. I rolled into town in my Mustang and hung out with the skaters and the druggies. But anyway, that was what I did. Then from there, I went to detectives a short while later, and been in detectives since '95. So I've been a detective my whole career. My main stint was in major crimes, working death investigations. So I have a platform there, and of course organized crime and gaming as well, which is more of a financial piece than anything in organized crime. When I started at CBI, I worked on a case of some New York boys that were made guys out of New York. I like to do things that are hard. Remember, I said that. So this group out of New York it's wide open here in little old Denver for this group because they were talking the talk. And I had some undercover experience, and so I infiltrated this organized poker group on Broadway. It's called the Gin Rummy Club on Broadway. Last name was Costardi, was his name, but we arrested him after a year, about a 6-month investigation. But anyway, that was an exciting investigation because we got high up into sports world, all kinds of criminal usury, bets being made, and it wasn't about the poker or the gambling so much as those criminal elements that prey on those that wanted to gamble and had the money to gamble. A lot of rich folks, a lot of pensions wasted, paying the VIG, the vigorous interest, the usury. They were, paying 800% interest on the buyback. So I did that. Of course, a lot of major crimes, a lot of deaths. And then 2010, I jumped over into the fraud world, specifically as the agent in charge. Well, I've found this an interesting niche here because, again, it's hard. All the homicides that I've worked through my career, although I can't take away that somebody's died, okay, I'm not making light of that one bit. But all those crimes that I've charged and tracked down, and I don't want to say hunted, but sometimes you have to hunt people, believe it or not, okay? They don't want to be found, and they're killers. So you got to hunt them. But they weren't hard to charge. They really weren't. When in the financial world, I've met if you say for a better word, all the top tier attorneys in the state of Colorado, because they come out of the woodwork when they're hired by their clients to represent them, and they hire the best. I'm not going after like a street guy and then who sold an ID, right? That's not usually what we do. So it's higher up folks. So what that's done is allowed me and my team to sharpen our own skills, hone our skills, because the defense attorneys have made us better. Each case makes me better, makes my team better. So that's a little bit about myself. I appreciate you letting me explain that. And I'll start the presentation here. I'm just going to go off camera for this, and then I'll just turn it back on if there's questions. Let's see here. So I'd like to start off with, and please give me some questions if there's something that you want to hear about, because one slide, I'm going to talk about it at length. But I always ask this: what is cyber? And if we were in person, I would demand, listen to me, right? I would demand an answer. What is cyber? Well, the answer is yes. Everything is cyber nowadays. There's everything but maybe, what's that, a carrier pigeon, putting in a little note in the carrier pigeon and letting it fly the coop, right? Believe it or not, that's a question I was asked down at the legislature a couple years ago on things. That's always a fun time. But anyway, I digress. So cyber, that component is the single most area that it's good and bad. It's good for you, a lot of convenience, and also a lot of convenience for the bad guys. We're going to talk about that at length. And what the convenience gives, it also gives up a little bit of your anonymity. You're just so quick to click, that kind of thing. So let's talk about some schemes that are affecting you. I'm going to go over this next slide with some schemes, but everybody should have more than this. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list or remotely close to it. It's just things that we see all the time in our shop. It doesn't mean it's everybody's shop or their experiences. But I want to go through these and maybe if I could get some questions, or if you have another type of method or scheme you want to ask me, hopefully I'll be nimble on my feet. I'm just getting over a pretty bad stint of COVID, so bear with me. Phishing. Who hasn't heard of phishing, right? We've all heard of phishing, but it is up and running. I'll have some slides coming up on that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's really the constant theme through my presentation. It's how bad guys get to you. It's phishing. It's spear phishing. And what it brings to you, right? It brings to you a lot of things such as ransomware, malware. Let's stop on those two things. Ransomware, that's the bad thing, right? That locks up your computer for a ransom. You're going to click on the link and it's going to download malware or ransomware. And then now your computer's locked up unless you pay $10,000 in Bitcoin. I don't know if any of you folks here have the payroll system Kronos, but we sure as heck do at the States, and we haven't had our payroll system since December because Kronos is shut down with ransomware. Somebody ruined it for everybody and clicked on one of those links, right? So you can't, everybody knows, hey, I know not to click on a link. Well, if it was that easy, we wouldn't have all this happening. But guess what? Everybody makes a mistake, including me, including you. You'll be doing too many things at once, or it'll look like an email from a buddy, and you'll just happen to click it. And once you do, you're going to hit yourself on the head and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But nevertheless, that happens. So that's what happens. They get you, or they'll get your friend, and then your friend sends you an email. Although it's not your friend, it's the bad guy. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the malware, it's installing on your computer. It's putting a keylogger or redirecting you to a site where they want to steal your credentials. I'll have other slides on that, of course. And then romance scams. I really want to talk about romance scams. It's so interesting. We worked a case, my team and myself, back in 2010. We had a Karen and Tracy Vassar, the V, it's in Victor. Karen and Tracy Vassar out of Brighton, Colorado. They took in money from 374 victims all around the world. These 374 victims, give or take two, right? They sent money in to a supposed love interest who they thought they were sending it to their agent or their person of record so they could get the money to them. Well, these folks, these victims, sent in money to the tune of about $2 million. Karen and Tracy Vassar were there to take that money, repackage it, and send it off to the fraudsters. In this case, in particular case, it was Nigeria. So very interesting that these two women started off as victims in the romance scam, but then looked at a way out. Well, their way out, which is normally the case in these frauds, is to then become a mule, a money mule, right? That's what we call people who mule money for others who don't really have a purpose with that money, but they take the money, mule it to somewhere else per instruction. The interesting thing about this, these two women, were their indifference for the victims. People lost their life savings. hundreds of thousands of dollars at a pop in some instances. You know, some people lost 5,000, some lost 300, 400,000, okay, out of 374 victims. So romance scams is interesting because the fraudsters have parlayed these victims and then used them, just instead of asking them for money, they just befriend them in a romance scheme and ask them to open up a bank account. That's it. And then when they open the bank account, they give those numbers over to the fraudsters, and then the fraudsters cause other frauds and schemes to come in to that bank account. And then of course they have instructions, the money mule, to forward that money along. So it spans, it's a wide breadth of a fraud. That's why I wanted to park there a little. Then of course there's work from home scams. When you apply on Craigslist or somewhere else, that all you need to do is receive packages in the mail and then repackage and send out, right? Work from home. There's the, I'm gonna skip one because I'll come back to it. There's the arrest or investigation phone call. Hi, this is the Colorado Bureau of Invest. You know, there's always wrong. They don't say investigation, right? They'll say Colorado investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest. And of course, they're going to say it in broken English. More than not, I'm not saying every case is, but when they speak to you on the phone, more than not, the English is bad. And you know it's a foreign individual. And they threaten you and they apply on your fear. They scare you into paying and going right then to get some gift cards and send money. I didn't have that in here, and maybe I should have. Gift cards. The money moves through gift cards. They want you to purchase gift cards. If you're ever asked to purchase a gift card on anything, if you're asked, think about it. Who's asking you? Somebody called you and now they're asking you to provide a gift card. That's totally a scam. Nobody's taking in money and profit off of gift cards. You know, you don't go down and buy a general gift card and then send it to somebody, and that's just ridiculous. But people every day get caught up in this. They are not stupid. They are not dumb by any means, but they get caught up in what the scheme of the moment is. Not everybody falls victim, but all they need is one, and they move on again and again and again. Then, of course, there's the grandparent scam. Let me take a sip of water. The grandparent scams, fascinating. The ones that I've worked, very interesting. They don't need much. They don't need the grandkid's name. In most instances, they don't even provide the name. And I'm not trying to speak as authority on most. I haven't talked to most victims, but the victims I have spoken to, which is thousands, okay, mostly they are just calling up and say, hi, Grandma. And they say, oh, is this little Johnny? Yes, it's Johnny. And they're very good at keeping that alive, okay, with playing off what's retorted back to them. So the grandparent scam is, hi, I was arrested and I'm in England. I'm arrested. I'm in Mexico. I'm arrested. Can you send bond money? I need you to do what? I need you to go down. It used to be Western Union. Used to be MoneyGram. It still could be. Don't get me wrong. But now it's gift cards. If you ever go down to the store at the King Soopers or the Safeway, usually they have little notices. The police departments put notices there by the gift card saying, hey, stop. Are you getting this gift card for, you know, that's very sage advice. There's my word of the day, sage. So you have to, you know, take heed to that. And if you have a loved one call you, direct them not to do it. Pause. And then the lottery scam, of course, that's old. Nothing new there, that you won the lottery, but whoopsie, you just need to pay the taxes. You won $20 million, but if you just send us poppins of $5,000, right? And then it's 10 grand, and then it's 50 grand. And people stay on that hook and start throwing good money after bad. It happens every day, all day. It still is happening. And of course, this is the computer repair scam. This is very interesting. They get folks, you know, if in your 50s or older, we're not all computer gurus, but they like the older folks who aren't gurus, but do have a computer. You suddenly have, and I like this, so bear with me, ask questions if I'm not conveying it correctly. I like it because it's in-depth, involved, and very shrewd. They'll call you, they'll email you, otherwise get a hold of you. Doesn't have to just be by an email. Your software is about to expire. Your virus protection is expiring. You have a problem with your Microsoft. Something like that. They've called it the Microsoft scam, if you want to Google it, but it's not fair to just say it's Microsoft. In any event, they cause a link to be sent to you, and want you to click that link so you can mirror your computer screen, right? You go to your computer, and now they're on your machine. They have several screens on their side. They're in a boiler room. Think of it as a old school boiler room, right? They got NORAD up behind them with a bunch of screens. They then are in your computer. They can grab anything they want, and you won't see it because they're going to peel it off onto another screen of theirs. So right now I have 3 screens going. You can't tell what screen I'm on, right? I'm only showing you my methods and schemes screen. Well, they then look for tax documents and other things, but then they say, well, sir, I just refunded you. You don't have much problem, so, but I'm sorry, I'm going to send you a refund. Can you check if you got it at your bank? Just do that for us real quick, right? So the unwitting victim goes to their bank account on their computer, logs in, and don't worry, they don't really give a darn about that password, but they have that too now. Once they're in the bank account, the fraudsters peel yet another screen off, and they go into your savings. So you're still looking or fumbling around in your checking, waiting for that refund to come in, right? And now they are inside your savings, moving the refund of $30,000 over to your checking. And what do you say, Ralph? 30,000. It was supposed to be 300. Yeah, but you see, I'm sorry about that. I just accidentally sent you 30,000. It should have been 300. Oh my God, my bad. I'm going to get fired. I have a family to feed. Can you please? And they pick 30,000 because they know how much money you have. They measure it perfectly, right? They're measuring it. They know how much is in there. And so they move 30 from your savings to your checking. You see that 30, and then you go, oh my gosh, I see that. They say, well, you can keep 1,000, keep 3,000, but can you please send me 27,000 back right now? And can you do this since it's in your checking? Can you go down and buy gift cards, or can you move it through Western Union or whatever? So do you see what just happened? That happens a lot, and it's very scary and very maniacal by the hands of the fraudster. And they're getting at you because you're giving them access to, you're giving them the keys to the kingdom. And so you just got to be wary of who you let in your house. You don't let everybody in your house. Why would you let them in your computer? Look at it that way. So if there's any questions on that, please let me know. And I think I covered all those. Good.
Hey, Ralph.
Yeah.
Could you repeat how they're getting access? You said that was a cloaked link or an email. Is that generally
right,
how
so they're already talking with you either on the phone or in a regular email. Hey, because you responded to the email, right? You say, oh, I have a problem. Yes, sir, you do. Do you mind? We can remote in and fix it for you right now, sir. We're tech support. So then you give them access. They send you that link, and then you have to agree to that link, and now they have remote access to your computer.
Right. Okay.
So, and it's, I hope this is I don't want to use the word best because it always could be better, folks, but it's the most succinct way I've been able to explain it, actually. But if there's any questions, I'll tighten that up right now. So thank you for the question. But the tactics that we're using on you guys, on you, me, all of us. So I don't mean you as in you, I mean all of us. Social engineering, we know what that is. It's the great salesman call, friendly. But more importantly, and I should put this first, it's open source research about you. Our lives are all out there on the internet. You know, you Google yourself, right? You Google away, and there's always something out there, especially younger generations too. They are, not necessarily younger, but I won't pick on them, but they put a lot of stuff on the Facebook and Instagrams and the tweets and the chit chats and all that, right? So, and I'm just being a little funny, but yeah, it's all out there. And I don't keep a Facebook just for this darn reason, because it's so scary. But the one thing that we've seen, especially when you get, I'm knocking on that now, believe it or not, this 50s plus age, right? Well, the mailing list that you get on, the ARP stuff. I got to tell you, everything is for sale out there. Mailing lists are no exception. Bad guys seek out and purchase these mailing lists from ARP and other places. Have you all heard of I don't recall what it is, I can Google it, but it's the state has money give back, right? You have money on the rolls somewhere and you didn't know it, and there's money there, and it's in the coffers, and you've got to do a process to get your money back, right?
Yeah.
Anybody know the name of that? Please shout it out. But I'm sorry, it's escaping me.
There's lostmoney.com. We do that for clients occasionally. Lost money or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have lost money. Well, we learned this in a fraud scheme. You can buy a list for $200-300, and the list will tell you who the highest amounted people are. So it's not anything like double blind or anything. I can find that Ralph Gagliardi I want to know the highest amount on there to one person. It's 320,000, right? So then the suspect can then start a profile on this person. Who is it, right? Well, this person happened to be now 85 years old and living back east, if they're still alive. And they then concocted an ID and then went through the channels and sent it in. So hey, I'm old Betty Johns here, and or old Ralph Gagliardi here, and I want my money. And they're not doing it over the phone, but it's correspondence. And they send the money to the last place, the address here in Colorado. But guess what? You can call your post office. The bad guys can call your post office and forward your darn mail. I am not saying it works every time, but what the hell? That's a pretty good haul, 320,000. Then we got to track it down. So it's mailing lists, everybody. It's those lists that you're on. I want to just emphasize that. So Colorado Give Back, just one example. By no means we should highlight them. It's how all these systems work. It's all out there. So you have to be wary.
Hey Ralph, have you seen Social Dilemma by chance?
Maybe. What was that about? Some sort of dilemma? What was it?
It was really about social media and the engineers. It's all about everything about you is known pretty much.
Yeah.
And
yes.
how they're fabricating the
it's
social
so
media.
scary that they have on you. Yes.
Yeah. So
you'll
get to this, but are you recommending as a tactic to not use certain websites at all? Minimize internet
Good question. I think it's the Internet of Things, right? You've got to be on the internet to do your stuff, right? I have my in-laws and up to my parents until they died. Everybody had we're mailing out checks, right? Well, mailing checks isn't exactly the safest thing either. So you have to use technology. That's okay. So embrace it, but be smart. I'll get into passwords and that kind of thing. So, but I would just be wary of what you're posting on there about yourself. Like I'm leaving for a 3-week vacation, my keys under the mat, right? I'm not saying that you would do that, but people sometimes do. They're like, I'm on vacation, I'm going to fly. So you have to watch what you say. Is there software that can screen incoming emails?
I would just recommend the Social Dilemma for people if you haven't seen it. It's very interesting. So,
yes. Yeah. Good call. Yes, sir. Incoming emails, there's ways that your email can get screened, but the bad guys have the filter busters as well. So you can be diligent. I always mark emails as phishing attempts or spam when I find them in my inbox. You've got to keep on it. That's daily hygiene. That's like brushing your teeth in your email. And then you've got to have a throwdown email too. I wouldn't do banking or anything I'd have a separate email that I just do my business on, right? You're not sending cute elf pictures back and forth on and all that stuff. Keep your email that you do your work on separate. And that's easier said than done, but once you get disciplined on it, it's not bad. And it's your phones and your computers let you have different clients. So that's what I recommend there. Let's see. I just wanted to point out your passwords on this slide here. Your passwords. If my password is Ralphie G 1968 and it's hacked, if you go to I've been pwned, PWND, I think that's it. There's no A in there. You've been pwned, pwned, PWND. I think it is. I'll find it later. But you can see if your email has been captured in some other breach. Well, my email in fact was so my password. So Ralphie G 1968 is taken. And the bad guys have that. They keep that in a spreadsheet, guys, for all these past breaches from decades ago. They keep it and aggregate the information, and they bring it to bear when needed. Well, they know that Ralphie G here has a Hotmail account. Yes, I still have a Hotmail account. I like my Hotmail. Anyway, they see that my password is 1968 after the Ralphie G. Well, we're creatures of habit. Maybe I use 1969, maybe I use, go forward. So what they look at, how you're applying your passwords. So if they have more than one, they're going to see what kind of algorithm you're using, and they just guess. It's no rocket science, folks. It's just a spreadsheet with a sort. It's that simple. There's no big shocker there. So your passwords, when they're harder, is helpful. But again, nothing's proof positive. And let me go to the next slide. So victims, we've talked about this, but victims, we have, and who's your suspects? We have family are victims and suspects in some cases. Caregivers, they come into your house, right? Scammers. I'm just throwing food for thought. I'm not trying to park on any one or pick out any category, but how they get at you, we talk about romance, lottery, and then of course fear or urgency. That's one thing we've covered. But how vulnerable are you? So we kind of take an assessment of where we're at. Let me take a little drink here. All right. You're pretty vulnerable because all of us on the call, at least and more than some than others, I don't know because everybody's camera's not on, but even then you might not know. But I remember the good old front porch, right? Front porch, where you'd sit out there at nights and evenings, and of course people would come over and do what? They'd ring the doorbell. Nowadays, all the doorbell is the Amazon delivery guy telling you there's a package out there. The doorbells no longer are family, friends, and anybody else really, truly coming over. Because if they are coming over, you already know they're coming because they just texted you from the front door, right? So bad guys used to come to your house. Come to you is my point. It's very physical, very visceral, right there. They were exposed. But what's changed? Well, the World Wide Web has changed. We talked about the internet, the digital things. What is cyber? But I do know that the technology, the analog things have changed. Of course, there's the typewriter. I learned to type on one older than that, the good old Commodore 64, the floppies, the 8-tracks, mixtapes. We have the Walkman with some bass boost right there. And of course, the Discman, some cell phones, and the avocado kitchen phone with the stretched out cord that would go inside the pantry, right? And you have to talk in front of your parents or, pull that cord into the closet, right? And then, of course, you had brothers and sisters. You didn't have all night in the world to be on that phone. So you had a finite amount of time, and your parents, for the most part, heard what you were doing, right? So that's also important. What do they know what you're doing, the kids are doing, on the computers, on their phones? Heck, there's no computers anymore. It's all phones. But let's say they have computers and phones, right? It's all on there, and it's so hidden from everybody. And you can reach out and touch them. So that's the point of this slide. Just point that out. And then one more, just to show you the Pope was getting put into place there in 2005, and we had no cell phones, just one flip phone on the bottom right. And then 8 years later, everybody's filming, right? In 2013. And imagine the technology since then. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the slide's still interesting how much technology has moved along. We went from typewriters to just everything's on our phones now. I do like to point out this slide. I've condensed it. Organized crime, whether it's the gang members, in your metro area, hanging down the block, or true organized crime, they all gravitate towards fraud now. Why? It's risk and reward. Does anybody know, and I guess I could wait to hear a couple answers on this, what the average bank robbery haul is? So if you physically have to go in and steal money at a bank with your little robbery kit, right? Mask, little pointed finger in behind your hoodie, and give them a note. Hey, stick them up. This is a bank robbery. How much money do they get? They have to go in to do this. How much money? Anybody?
10 grand.
Yeah.
50 grand. 50 grand.
No, good guess. I averaged it myself in doing
About $800.
research. How much?
800.
Nope, it's $5,000, give or take.
Oh, that's close.
$5,000 is an average take. I'm not saying they can't get 400,000 during the right haul, right? They could, but more than not, it's
5,000. I was on my way to down my car for an oil change up here in the Denver area, Denver West area. We were parked at a red light. We're over here by Denver West Mall. And me and my partner, we were going to pick up his car. And we were at a red light. A car goes by me right through the red light on my left, and then turns right eastbound on Colfax up on 2 wheels and gunned it. It was around the corner, gone. And then after the car was gone, it was the Calvary. I said to myself, boy, somebody ought to call a cop on this guy. Wow, that's a good red light there. Huh. Anyway, well, there was not less than 12 police cars then, after the car had turned right, drove past us on the left and the right with the brake smell of exhaust and fuel and brakes in the air, with the lights and sirens on. And I'm like, boy, these guys take some red lights seriously here. And by the way, how did they know the guy turned right? They are on top of it. Well, we got into it, but we turned the corner and we went around we looked around the mall, and the police come back around the mall before we get around. We were kind of in the parade. We get back around the other side of the mall, and we come to find out that it was a bank robbery they were chasing. And the bad guy behind the mall had thrown out the die pack bag, a money bag, $5,000, threw it out. It's all dyed up, right? And there was a poor rookie cop standing there by he wanted to get back in the chase, and we kind of drove by and said, carry on, kind sir. And then, but we learned right then too, they were following him with a GPS chip in the cache. So that's how they were knowing where they were going, and they caught him. My point is, look at all that attention. 12 or so cops chasing you for $5,000. Now your hands are stained. You're still arrested. They picked him up 20 minutes later at his house when he pulled in the driveway, right? Because they knew who it was. So why would you put yourself to that risk? So that's the point of that. You could do this from the internet and make a ton of money. So weak links. Fraudsters, these bad guys, are depending on our habits, your habits. They know what we do. It's not hard to sit there, and human nature is pretty predictable, right? Especially Americans. I can't tell you how lazy I am, right? So we always have to step it up. So they do their homework about you, your office, your corporate information. If they're going after businesses, right, which is lucrative, that's a whole nother presentation, business ID theft and business email compromise. We work that as a specialty at my office. But anyway, they count on us doing many things at once. We don't have the time to be thorough with what we're reading, and we click on stuff. That's really it. I did find this was in 2020, I found this. I'm sure there's some more or cheaper or more expensive, but phishing kits. So when you want to send somebody a phishing link, these bad guys are not creating the code. They're not writing code. They go to the dark web and buy a phishing kit with a P for 25 bucks. They download the script, they embed it in their email, and they send it. That's it, depending on what they want to do with it. So I just want to, plus I like the tackle box. But anyway, that's the interesting thing that I found. Nobody's writing code. It's already been written. Nobody has to be an evil genius. They just have to be fat, dumb, and stupid, grab a link, and send it out to 1,000 emails. So what if only one person hit on it, right? Let me keep cracking here. We have ransomware and malware. We really talked about that, about locking up your computer and that kind of thing. So you have to, definitely, if you have photos and other prized possessions, make sure you have a separate backup that does not touch your main system. And I'm not here to present on your network and how that's configured, because everything's different. But there's ways to do it. And then the main thing I want to get to, take another glass of water here, hold on. It's the emails they send you. This is just a sample that was sent to me, okay? Depending on the time of year, or do I actually have something going on with Netflix right now? Well, I did. I complained about a fee the other day, and now all of a sudden I'm going to click on this. Oh, what? I've been hijacked, hacked. They want to redirect you then, in Netflix's example that I'm just giving, to then take you to, air quotes, Netflix's site, and you put in your password, right? Well, what you do is when you put in your password, sure, they have it for Netflix, and they say, whatever, I don't care if they have my password in Netflix. Well, guess what? We are creatures of habit. You're telling me, let me say that again, you're telling me that everybody on this call you only have one password for every site out there. I would say, come on. If you do have a different password for each site, then good for you. You're better than even me on the cybersecurity, because I still have my throwdown passwords. Like, I don't care if my Denver Post gets hacked. Actually, I wish it would get hacked and taken from me. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so they take those passwords that you just entered and they hope it now works for what? Your bank. I used to have my bank was the same as my Gmail, my Hotmail. You know, this is 10 years ago, but still, right? So they want your password and try it other areas. So that's what they're doing. And if you might not have Bank of America, but you might. So that's what they do. They email spoof. Let's talk about this. This is we only have a few slides left. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time. But the spooked emails. When you're getting emails from anyone, always be wary of who's sending it. Is it who it's coming from? You can only vet it so much, right? Is it your friend who always sends you a link to this or that? Then it's probably fine. But definitely, if they're asking you to go somewhere else and it seems a little off, then take a second. Email that person directly back from a forward, not a reply. I'll get to that. But it's very easy to hide who they are. They transpose characters, add an underscore. For instance, in my example, I have John _ Doe, or it could be John.Doe. Like my email is Ralph.Gagliardi, right? So you might not notice it. The R and an N put together look like an M. The letter M is in Mary. Lowercase L and uppercase 1 look the same. They changed .com to .net, that kind of thing. Can you tell the difference on this slide? So we have the 3 on the top and then the same 3 on the bottom. Let me just help you with that a little bit. On the glaring one, right? The John Smith. Look at John. See the O and a 0. And then each one has their own issues. But you might not catch that, is my point, right? Who would catch the O in John? If you're not looking at him, you don't have the luxury, right? So here's my little block moved over, but it's actually the O on John there, and then it's the 1 on law or the L. That's where that's going. Display name. So you think you're getting something from Jim Lots of Parking, right? But if you hover over with your cursor, it could display, not always, guys, but there's no single fix. It's Bob's your uncle out here on the internet. So this is one thing. You hover over the email address, and it could tell you who actually sent it, right? Because the display name is different than the actual email. So when you want to forward versus reply. You don't want to reply because you'll reply to hack you all day at Gmail, right? But if you forward and then start typing in Jim, it'll go, the right one. Linux distro that is harder to hack. Yeah, so I guess you could. Everything is hackable, and depending on what level you're at, right? Like it might not be because nobody wants it, right? It's only hackable as what people want in. And then what types of barriers you're going to put in place to get there. So anything is better than nothing. And then, of course, I don't want to get into the Linux aspects because it does have some strengths, but there are weaknesses as well in anything. And I'm not speaking directly about Linux, though, but I mean, just in anything we do, there's always a workaround for the fraudsters. But prevention, let's talk about this a bit.
So are you saying Linux is not infallible or a better solution? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't want to speak to that. I'm not an SME. I'm not at all. I'm sure there's some learned folks on the call that would be much better to address that and say, well, I've got this one issue corrected. Then perfect, that's great. But there's going to be something else that isn't, that won't have that solution, right? Somehow. There's some other exposure where you're weakened. Just because you have this door closed doesn't mean they can't come in a window on anything. Now granted, maybe you'll be lucky. It's not a matter of if you'll be a victim, it's when, but it's a sheer numbers volume. Just because you haven't been a victim yet doesn't mean you won't be. It doesn't mean you will be tomorrow either, though. So there's, you have a good chance of not being a victim, but you just want to be ready in case you are. You want to apply your updates and your patches whenever you can. There's always some, like with Kronos again, it's always like, or Microsoft, there's always something that like, I can't believe that was an open port or open this, but there's always something. So you just got to use your due diligence and update when you can. You want a careful click. I always go to, like if I get something from Home Depot, like an email, and I do get emails from Home Depot, but I want to go to Home Depot, I just use the app and I go to it. I don't click on links. And if I do click on a link, which I do, right? Especially if I know I'm corresponding with them, I don't ever, I go directly when I enter a password or something. I always go on my own. Like when people vet us at work, here's a quick example. When people are being sticklers, like they should, hey, I want to, no offense, but I want to vet who you are because I've already bought 10 home warranties and you could be that guy. I said, yeah, no problem. So vet me. Well, what is your number? I'll call you back. And I'm like, look, I'll give you my number, but that's not really vetting me. Google Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the Denver office, and then when you call that number that you find on Google, ask to speak with Ralph. That's what I do. If you want to do it, let's do this. Don't mess around. Let's do it right. I don't want to give them a false sense of, because fraudsters take advantage of that, by the way. They know that people say, well, what's your number? I'll call you back. Well, that's the voice over IP and all that. It's so awful. You don't know who you're talking to. So I always expect people to vet who we are and do it right. So, but careful clicking, who mailed who. I know I didn't have that on my frauds, but people purchase dogs or selling dogs all the time. And you're selling dogs, but why are you giving money if you're the one selling dogs? Well, because they overpaid or this or that. And I'm like, well, what the heck's happening? That just be wary of what's this transaction looking like. I'm not saying dogs aren't purchased on the internet or there's not there's legitimate transactions all the time. But who called who? And ask yourself, why am I heading down to the 7-Eleven and buying gift cards? What is happening? And once they get you on the horn there, they keep you on. They keep you engaged. Once you hang up, they know they lost you. So they keep you embedded with that call till you send that first, you give them the back numbers on that gift card. But we always ask to verify, by a phone call, your number you looked up. I kind of give an example of that. Forward versus reply. And of course the emails, if it's an email scam, is the grammar off? It seems like they don't have Grammarly, right? And I just don't understand this. They could tighten up their game immensely if they just ran that sucker through maybe a Google Translate that just seemed to fix it into English. But that is the truth right there. The grammar's off and it's odd times and there's always urgency. And then of course I'll ask why? Why is this happening? Are you requesting something or what's going on? So just be wary is just my point of that why. Passwords. Strong and complex, I talked about that. Two-factor authentication, we've been hearing and reading more and more every day. Two-factor isn't necessarily the end-all be-all. It is not. It is not the end-all be-all. I don't know, there's probably war stories here on this call. I think we have a lot of professional folks here that if I want to target you, and I know you have a two-factor, I can work my way around that. Pretty simple. And if I couldn't, then I'd go to the next victim. But in other words, not every person targeted will be a victim, but only need 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, right? So two-factor authentication is good, but you want to be, it's not the end all. Virus protection, keep it current with your computer and your cell phone. And of course, don't do any banking or business where you're putting account numbers on public Wi-Fi. And of course, I don't have that in here, but the VPN, that kind of thing, definitely, we recommend VPNs where you can. And again, I've been reading a lot lately. Those are not even foolproof. So it's funny how weak things are. That's why I don't want to get into, definitely not a Linux guy, but it just depends on remember how it was Apple products that, oh, they're not hackable because there's not enough of them, so bad guys aren't doing it. Well, guess what? They have comeuppance. They've got their comeuppance for sure. So this is my favorite picture to share everybody. Let's see, I got a question here. Is there a VPN that you recommend? There is not, because if I did, right, and then that sucker got breached tomorrow, I'd be the bad guy. So heck no, I will never. It's for your own computer professionals to vet that with you.
What about, not that you're making a recommendation, but when you're talking about passwords, LastPass, those type of packages, or any input on that?
Yeah, I think those are still better. Like we've talked about, the common theme is that it's better than having nothing. So your front door, right? I don't know if anybody on the call has ever had to boot in a door, right? I'm a small guy. I've booted in many doors. A lot of war stories with that. But your lock on most houses, 99% of the houses right here in my neighborhood I'll talk about, I could go up to any house right now and with my shoulder get into any home. But we still lock our doors, right? It's better than nothing. So my point is, like with LastPass, I've been reading a lot lately too, for the last year or two. There's a lot of issues with those as well that aren't always 100%. So I have yet to see anything that's 100%, but I still think LastPass or the other password firms that do that for you, that aggregate that, it's still better than nothing if you have the time to set all that up. I just still prefer my own personal passwords and then just use hygiene on my sites because that just seems to work for me. But what works for me, I don't dare say would work necessarily for you, for everybody. It's not one size fits all. So
are you, is your organization seeing a lot in the digital space, digital assets? Is that something that you encounter in your area?
what's that with digital assets? What's the question?
Crypto digital assets, are you seeing a lot of fraud or any cases with that?
Yes, so that's the bane of my existence right now. I sure miss old school fiat, praying hands, right? Praying hands. So with these scams, sending it off with the Bitcoin or other Ethereum or other mechanisms, it's catching us off guard. And rightfully so, though. This is not in the normal financial space, right? I can't just slap a tracer on that sucker. It is designed and meant to be anonymous. Although that's debatable. We found that the bit sending money digitally is not as anonymous as you think, especially when the feds put their minds to it. And we had some money sent out on a ransomware, right? They wait till it parked and then froze the accounts. So it depends on what type of system and exchange they're using. So yes, we do. I hate it with every fiber in my being because remember, like I said, I like the hard stuff. Well, this is the one area I don't like. I wish I could retire today and not work another digital currency fraud because they're awful to follow. It's not in the normal course of business. It's playground rules, and there are some rules, but it's so loose, and you're dealing with these foreign countries, especially when you jump out to some of these exchanges, and you just can't. And I feel bad for these victims, but we have had some success, but it was at a heavy price. While we were following 30,000 of somebody's life savings, took us 4 weeks. What did we not do while we were freezing and seizing this 30,000, right? So it's diminishing returns at some point, and that's just our space. So yes, we do, and I just scares me, and that's what keeps me up at night. Anything that moves digitally like that, it just scares me. So, any other questions?
I don't think so that I do. Anybody else? Let me check the chat box. Let's see that we missed anything. There's a question about software screening incoming emails. Again, that would be a tech question, but probably the same answer as the other things, but any comments there?
Yeah, that's your internet or your email client could have turn those tools on, but like I said earlier though too, bad guys get around those filters. So it is not just because something got through. We with the state, right? Not the government by any means is a flagship of how we should do stuff, right? Probably a little bit of the opposite. But anyway, we do have those filters, and stuff still comes in. I get some all the time that I mark them as spam or flag as spam right away as phishing, because that helps. So don't rely on your filters. Rely on your own intuition and what's going on. Why is Jan sending me this Google Docs link? Hey, everybody. Wait, I'm going to call Jan. Hey, Jan, it's Ralph down here in the county. What's going on, Jan? What are you talking about? I didn't send anything. Oh, you didn't? Okay, hold on. Hey, everybody, don't click Jan's email. Oh, sorry, we just clicked it. So they'll still get in even in-house with filters. That's my point.
Okay. Another question here. I think I know the answer to this. What did you say about being called by a quote unquote agent to look them up on your website, I believe is what you said, on CBI?
Oh yeah, so we call people, right, victims. We do a business identity theft, right? Businesses have a lot of value. That's a whole training class, a whole thing. But Alexa, stop. We don't need to hear from you. Thank you, Alexa. Anyway, okay, so what we get on that is we're calling people, hey, Todd, did you realize that, Todd, Joe, Mike, whatever we're calling, do you realize you're a victim? You have this business created in your name placed over here. And they're like, come on, man, you're a scammer right now. So we actually have people vet who we are, right? So if the police do call you, they're not going to mind if you vet them, but really vet them. Don't just let them give you the phone number. You can take it down. Don't rely on it. Go to the World Wide Web and say Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Denver office phone number, right? And you'll see our website come up, and then find the phone number and then ask for Ralph. That's how you could get me right now on any one of my 2 phones or tablets or other devices here. So, yeah.
I will say that Ralph goes undercover, so he doesn't like to be this visual or visible, I should say. So keep that in mind.
No, that's fine. It's just getting over the COVID. It's tough.
Here's another question. I have a mailman that said he knows of a senior resident that is being a victim of people sending her mail of distress, and she feels bad and sends them money. How should this be reported and to whom? If you see that.
Yeah, so if they could contact us, we could, depending on the nuances, right? We could contact that elderly person. You'd have to give us their name or sit down with them while you have them call us. We have a victim resource group, victim advocates that work frauds, Hazel Heckers and her team. And then we would work with that person, whether you get an agent or, our civilian staff. And then we work with them to mitigate and help bring hopefully some good resolution to that. So just reach out. And then I think, are we all in Springs today? Is that right? Everybody's in Springs here?
We have some out of state, but yeah, mostly.
Yeah, so Springs is an excellent department with their fraud group. I love working with those folks there. Of course, we have our go-to guys, right? If I could break out a pack of pools and hand a couple guys stuff, they've been some great. And my go-to, not just because this is the fraud, we're talking fraud. If I was working a murder, which I do, I still go to the fraud guys because they get stuff done. And they just do. And I know I've talked to Springs, the detectives there are just great. I call them up. We had a guy got K-barred up in Leadville, got killed, and we were tracking a credit card, and the Guns and Knives squad were just dragging their knuckles on this case, trying to do a court order and this and that for the credit card. And I said, why are you doing that? You've got a guy murdering people in the wind. Let's go. And I said, well, we don't have a contact for this bank. I said, wait, I got 10 contacts. Let's go. 10 minutes later, we had the guy buying something at Walmart in Orson Springs. And I called up the guys there at the fraud department, and they went down, grabbed the film, and we had the guy arrested in like 20 minutes. But so I guess I digress, but that's, Springs is excellent to contact, as my point, if you do have victims there, but we're welcome to handle it as well.
Yeah, when do you know to go to you versus local?
Well, I would start with your local, especially if it's something like Springs. They definitely have the capability and the professionalism to handle that. In fact, the recent times I've worked with Springs on a couple other dust-ups, I mean, their level of professionalism, I'm taking notes. These guys are just, and that's okay, but they are just top-notch down there in Springs. I can't give them a shout-out enough. So go to your locals if you have a big enough, robust department to handle it. And they might not handle it to your liking, then give us a call. But we're not gonna we're not gonna circumvent what they're going to do or not. We'll figure that out when you call us.
Okay, somebody's asking for a phone number, but I imagine Springs has it online, Google, or do you have it handy, Ralph?
I do not. I would Google Colorado Springs Police Department, make a file a report, that kind of thing.
Okay, I think Kim, you asked that, so yeah, we can look it up if you can't find it.
Oh, I thought it was going to be 8675309, but that looks like it's 444-7000. Okay.
Well, this is helpful. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you feel better soon. You seem like you're turning the corner anyway.
I hope so. I'm out of water, so I think I timed it right with my little glass of water here. So yes, so I appreciate any questions. You can always email me too. Anybody that attended, email me and have a question, and we'll send it out to you. We do a lot of wire fraud. We do a lot of business email compromises, and I think you had me on tap to do another presentation for those things. So that's really what we do in our office. The cop side, the detective side, we do business email compromise and business identity theft. So.
Yeah, I think we would like to do something for that in the future for sure.
Sure.
And then also for this audience, maybe next year again. So yeah, thank you very much, Ralph. I appreciate it.
Sure, and
Any
I'm
other-
always good at the questions. So if anybody has any questions or input, please give me. If I don't know something, and if I'm not an SME, which I'm not, no Holiday Inn Express last night for me, but I would let you know, because I don't have all the answers. I just try to be reasonable as I work through things.
You got to translate this for civilians. SME is a subject matter expert, right?
Yeah, subject matter expert. Yes, sir. So.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you very much. Let me just double check. Anybody else have any questions? We're good.
Thanks,
Oh,
everybody, for your comments.
Tapping for you, so that's great. Hey, thanks so much, Ralph. I will be in
Thanks,
touch
Robin.
with you. But you can contact Ralph directly or me at Todd at Level 5 Financial if there's any questions or thoughts. So other than that, have a great night, everybody. And Ralph, you take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep, bye-bye.